Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Diana Martin. I'm the executive director here at Hourglass, and so glad to see such a full house to help celebrate the Lancaster County Community Foundation's 100th anniversary. Today, we're going to hear from Sam Bressi, the president and CEO, and Tracy Cutler, executive vice president, about what this milestone means for the community. I just told Sam they look pretty good for 100. So what do you think? Afterwards, we'll have some time for questions from all of you. Our two speakers today also have the unique distinction of being my former bosses. So just throwing that out there. I'm not sure if any of that made the slideshow, but really grateful for everything that they've done for me, both personally and professionally, and excited to hear today more about the direction that their organization is going. So before I hand it over to them, I just would like to thank our First Friday Forum sponsors, Rogers & Associates, for making the forum today possible, the Ware Center for hosting us, and also the team at Shoemaker, who does all of our live streaming services, and we're able to join in the folks who are watching online today. So thank you all so much for being here. I know that we have a lot to hear from our speakers, so I'm going to hand it over to them. Thanks.
Make this up a little bit, not too much. Hey, so great to be here. Diana, thank you. Tracy's making me do this timer because I'm notoriously, I expand on things and the ADD captures me from time to time and I'll go off on chase some squirrels. So I have a couple of things. First of all, this group, Diana is very near and dear to the Community Foundation's heart, and she's a great leader, great developing, emerging leader in Lancaster. So I want to congratulate Hourglass on bringing in such a talented individual, giving her a chance to thrive here. And Hourglass has been an important piece of my 16 years here in Lancaster. It's been a space where I could learn and I could hear from other leaders. I could learn what was important in the community. Thomas Friedman called us, the home of complex adaptive systems. Part of that complex adaptive system works right here from this room, and we've been very lucky, proud to work with Hourglass, one on the Deliberative Democracy Forum last year, and the Trust in Our Elections conversation that happened a week or so back. Very, very well done, well attended, and important work that's happening through Hourglass that the Community Foundation's been really proud to support. So, with that said, I'm 20% into my time and I haven't started yet. So, but I can tell you, as I look back, I do look pretty good for 100. I don't look great for 58, but the story of the Community Foundation movement starts around the turn of the century, 1900 range. Before in the 1800s, 1700s, and on. You knew about philanthropy and legacy philanthropy, and we all know their names. You know Carnegie and you know Rockefeller. But at that point, philanthropy was the purview of the ultra wealthy, especially legacy philanthropy. The idea of leaving money and marking your name and having it benefit the community into perpetuity, that was a Rockefeller and a Carnegie experience. That was not a Joe Smith, Sally Young or Sam Bressi activity in the 1900s. And so back in Cleveland, I was really hoping Martha Harris would be here, but she's not here. But back in Cleveland in 1914, a guy named Frederick Goff, he's a banker and an attorney. He was looking at this and saying, how can we democratize philanthropy? How can we provide a vehicle that would invite and enable everyone in the community to leave a lasting legacy, no matter what their means? And he developed the first community foundation, the Cleveland Community Foundation. It basically invited the average citizen to, rather than having a trust that had your name on it, you could be part of a collective foundation where you could have a fund, a piece of that collective community foundation. And the community foundation movement was birthed at that point. And Martha Harris, who is a longtime resident of Lancaster County, her grandfather actually served on the board of the Cleveland Foundation, the inaugural board. So like everything Lancaster, there's always a connection. And so there's even a connection to this story back all the way to 1914. And from our perspective, what was best about Mr. Goff's conviction and concept and innovation at the time was that he didn't keep it to himself. He became an evangelist for this concept, community foundation that he had formed in Cleveland. He made it a movement nationally. And so he spoke, I think it was not quite 10 years till his death, but in the 7 to 8 years before he passed away, he was everywhere. He would talk to anybody about the value of community foundations and what it could do to transform communities across the country. And fortunately for us, Martin M. Harnish, local attorney. Oh, and I forgot the clicker, so thank you. See, I would have been completely ignoring this. Thank Tracy. So Martin Harnish, local attorney, actually as a committee of the Chamber of Commerce back in the day, he heard about the movement, the Community Foundation movement, and he was the spark that created the Lancaster Community Trust at the time. So he brought that democratization of philanthropy here to Lancaster. And actually, it was 4 years later we made our first grant, a $600 scholarship in 1928. And like they say, the rest is history. Now, about 80 years, the first 80 years, it was very, very quiet. So our role, it was a Lancaster Community Trust. Trust officers and banks managed all the money. They had the conversations with individuals who might give money, and money was given in perpetual trust. And the Community Foundation at the time, the Lancaster Community Trust, was the beneficiary of these dollars. So our role for a full 80 years was distribution of those assets in the community. We were grant makers, and that's what we were. We were not really a full-fledged, engaged community foundation at that time. And Tracy's going to go in a little deeper into this, but it was a quiet phase for 80 years. Volunteer run, not a single staff person, and trusts managing the assets, and the distribution committee making those distributions to community projects. Now it's a very different organization, and around 2000 is when that started to change, and it was really the board leadership that made that change. I was the beneficiary, one of the many beneficiaries of that change. And I started in 2008, and the board was at that point plugged into our Council on Foundations, the National Association, and looking for best practices. How could we amp up and fully engage our community? And at the time, the three words were: one, primary, responsible stewardship. We invest these assets and we make good grants, and we are stewards of the community's resources. Two, we adopted the engaged community strategic objective. That was a new thing. We had done most of our 80 years behind closed doors with people who made the decisions. You would slide your grant application under the door and maybe money would come out at the end of the day. This was a new way to approach things. So we were in the community. We're getting to know our community, getting to know the community deeply, and understanding and engaging and hearing from people in the community. And a third pillar that we adopted was inspiring philanthropy. And I saw Jeremy, I think, walk in at some point. Part of that, as you looked at it, Extra Give in 2012 was a big part of how do we envision and how do we invite the community into philanthropy? How do we make that connection and bring more people into community and into philanthropy? So as of today, well, I should mention Forever Lancaster as well. Ashland's right there if you want to talk to somebody, and we will be inviting the conversation. Forever Lancaster is really, call it a brand. It's what the Community Foundation is all about. All of the funds that we do, all of the idea of inviting community members to leave legacy. Forever Lancaster, they help with that and guide and steward individuals who want to be a part of that. So today, 563 individual funds. So we're one organization, but we're made up of 563 components. Some of those components have very specific guidelines for how their dollars are distributed. Some of them are much looser. Some of them have said, use the money for the highest, best use in your time. Others are directing it right now as we speak and through donor-advised funds. Almost half of our resources are in donor-advised funds. So when you hear about some of our work a little later in the program, it's going to be heavy on the directed work that the Community Foundation has directed, because for 80 years we would only accept dollars that we would direct. We have really expanded that model and experienced tremendous growth. 563 individual funds, over $60 million of grants made over time in many different ways. And you talk about our fund, like, do you have to be wealthy to be a fund holder? Well, we have a $65 million fund that's a charitable trust transfer. $65 million. That's our largest single fund. We have $10,000 endowments. We have endowments from the Rosado kids, 13-year-olds. If you want to ever meet Kathy, you'll love her. But they are working to create endowed funds at 13 years old and starting below $10,000. So we have the whole range. Everybody's welcome at the Community Foundation. Finally, our signature event, Extra Give, mentioned it. You all know about it. It's an invitation to enter philanthropy and to be part of the community. Again, it's democratizing philanthropy. You make the decisions. We direct the dollars. I will say we've never taken a penny from the Extra Give. You've all heard me say that before, and we won't. The idea is to inspire philanthropy. And I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to talk a little bit about where the money comes from.
I'm going to take the clicker with me and do that. So, thanks, Sam. It's fun to tell this story. It's really an honor to be working at the Community Foundation at this time. I don't know who else in the room has had the chance to work at an organization that is, passing a century mark, but to be the people who are carrying the baton forward at this time is, really a unique opportunity. And I think we really feel honored to be in this space. So we want to make sure that we're sharing the work that this Community Foundation does and how we collectively as a community can really take hold of this. So part of what we want to do is dive a little bit deeper and think about, what are some of the roles that the Community Foundation plays? One is, where does the money come from? We've said over time, it isn't magic. It's not magic. It's the dollars are here supporting Lancaster County today because people have made choices. And, literally over the course of the last 100 years, individuals have said, I think there's an opportunity to make an investment in the future of Lancaster County. And that's what I'm going to do. As Sam mentioned, a community foundation is a unique tool. It's a unique resource for communities. There are more than 800 of them now across the country. Our community is very place-based. All of them are place-based to some degree. We are the Lancaster County Community Foundation. There are community foundations that serve the entire state of Arizona. And we have a really unique opportunity by being tuned into this particular geography and all the things that are part of that. So, and it's for people with large funds. It's for people with small funds. This is about collective philanthropy. This is our community foundation, and this is all of us making choices to really set our community up for success. And so, what we're talking about, it's something that has been growing and will continue to grow over time. When we think about endowments, sometimes we think about hospitals or universities have endowments. So to have a community endowment is something pretty spectacular and pretty special. So a lot of us may think about our 401k as our longest investment. We're looking out over the long time horizon. Community Foundation is looking over the longest of time horizons and investing specifically for that return over the long haul. So we have worked on a little video. So I'm just going to share the short video our team put together on how endowment works.
You may know that the Lancaster County Community Foundation is entrusted with our community's endowment. But what is an endowment? Well, it's a unique tool that provides ongoing community support with funds that are pooled and invested to grow in a sustainable way. Think of it like an orchard, where each individual tree is a fund. People give money to benefit the community, and as the fund grows, a portion of that growth, the fruit, becomes available for use, while the principal, the tree, remains. This creates a shared resource that is accessible year after year. Lancaster County is a vibrant place with a wide range of needs, so available funds from the endowment are used to financially support focus areas, things like the environment, arts, human services, education, and so much more. For the past 100 years, people like you have put money and energy into growing the community's endowment to impact local causes, and that impact will continue forever. You can be part of shaping the future of Lancaster County.
So there you go. Yeah. We had a lot of fun. Putting that together. And yeah, I'm also going to add up here a graphic representation of impact. So what does it look like? As Sam mentioned, our starting fund for people who decide to open a fund right now during their lifetimes is $10,000, which can be built over time. And so this graphic kind of shows, what does it look like? The tree is the fund, right? The principal, and the fruit is the spendable income. So when we look across the top, and you can see the dollars in the fund, but you can also see the number of grants awarded. So, you go out 50 years, and you can see that the fund value is nearly the same as the number of dollars that have been invested back into the community. So we can imagine what that can look like when we have dozens and dozens and hundreds of funds that are working in our community for the causes that we all care about. And so we have an investment advisory committee. We have a an outsourced chief investment officer. So we're managing, again, for the long term. We have an investment spending policy. Happy to talk about that. We work on a 5-year rolling average. So it really, creates an opportunity for us to smooth out the bumps over time, in boom times and bust times. We're creating a continuous pool of resources that are available for our community. So what does this do? This is it's a way for everyone to support Lancaster County. And it creates, we can think about it as creating both resilience and possibility. So 2008, the year that Sam started, actually, we all know, Great Recession. And I know, one of the things that the Community Foundation board said at that time is, okay, part of the reason we're here is to be here in our community's time of need. And so, at the time, without pause, the board voted to push, nearly $1 million out into $750,000 into the community to meet basic needs, to meet housing and food and shelter costs for people who needed help right away. So Community Foundation has that. And it has all sorts of ways to open up possibility for our community. We're going to talk about a few of those. So we work 360 degrees around the community. We're supporting healthcare and education and the arts and the environment, causes of all types, in partnership with donors and by knowing what the community needs. So I'm going to run through a few things because I'm watching my time. I want to make sure that we talk about a few of the places that the, early investments that the Community Foundation has made. Like, what does this look like over time? Because one of our key roles, in addition to stewarding the dollar, or in addition to kind of building and growing our community's endowment, is to steward these dollars and to steward the legacy of the individuals who've made investments, to support the community. So how do we help do that? I mean, one of the things early on that the Community Foundation, this is roughly the mid 90s, there was a parcel of land that wasn't doing much, and there was some kind of curiosity around how can we activate this. And so the Community Foundation was able to come along and kind of open up the possibilities for the Enola Rail Trail, funded the first study of the Enola Rail Trail. And as we know today, it's a 29-mile stretch of recreational land that is used by literally hundreds and thousands of people every year. So it has to start somewhere. It's the kind of possibility that can open up. In 1999, many people in this room may remember the Wat and Shan department store. Will you raise your hand if you've ever walked into the Wat and Shan department store? Some people, I worked in the kitchen department when I was in high school. I got my mom a pot for Christmas with a discount. So when it was time for that department store to move on, it left a really big opportunity in the middle of Penn Square. And there's lots of opinions even today about that space and what happened. But what was evident was that we needed to make a choice in Lancaster about what was going to happen there. And so the Community Foundation funded the first study, literally to explore possibilities for the Wat and Shan department store building. And this is such a cool picture, I think, because, we can see, what's been valuable to our community. We said, this architecture is spectacular. And we'd made other choices in our community. And at this point, we said, we've got to preserve it. So here it is, all propped up. And ultimately, as we know, this is now the Lancaster Marriott and Lancaster County Convention Center. So possibilities we can explore and activate. I'll just give you one more example in this space. In 2002, in the midst of all of this construction, there was the possibility of taking down a lot of the buildings in that parcel. And the Community Foundation was able to come forward with some additional dollars to support the Historic Preservation Trust to preserve the home and law office of Congressman Thaddeus Stevens. So as we know now, that is under the purview of Lancaster history and will be a cornerstone to the new Thaddeus Stevens and Lydia Hamilton Smith Center for History and Democracy, which will be opening next year and will be a huge opportunity not only for Lancaster County, but for our country. So there have been a tremendous amount of good and incredible grants. You can actually read when you go to our website. There's a history page. Steve Geisenberger, one of our former board chairs, has actually written a beautiful history that's been published in the Journal of the Lancaster County Historical Society. And so they've graciously shared the rights to that. So feel free to go to that and read a little deeper. But in the early 2000s, things were starting to shift. We'd been making a lot of really important grants. And as Sam mentioned and alluded to, it was also a time where our board said, let's start looking a little deeper. In fact, Dale High was the chair of the Community Foundation board at that time. And he specifically said, how can we lift our heads off the page and start thinking about how we can be more than really good grant makers? And he connected us with something called the Council on Foundations, which is the national advocacy group for all sorts of foundations and support and resources. And so we connected with them and we started to do what Sam had mentioned and really lean more into a community leadership role. So I'm going to turn it back to Sam to talk about some strategic philanthropy.
Great. Wow, we are really on time, which is bizarre. Crazy. And Tracy mentioned that I started in 2008 and then the financial crisis occurred. And this is true. I don't think it was a causal relationship, although I did feel a little unnerving at the time when we had, I started February 25th, 2008. Our peak asset value in the history of the Community Foundation, it was right at $70 million for a hot second. And the next year was rough. It was a rough year. But you know what? When we talk about rolling 5-year average and how we distribute dollars on a regular basis, the idea of distributing dollars, and it's like when things are booming and growing, it looks like we're lagging, but we're playing the long game. When things drop like they did in 2008, 2009, and stay, and we struggled there for a while. At that point, we were consistently putting out really great numbers. And as Tracy said, we did a program we called Family Aid. All our board at the time, I give all the credit to the board. And honestly, that was the moment that I fell in love with the Lancaster County Community Foundation, and subsequently the Lancaster County community. And 16 years later, it's been really such an honor and a privilege to be able to be part of such an incredible organization. So, this is like way beyond. Gosh, I don't really have anything written down. I'm just looking at So what is it, as a community leadership organization, the idea of it's really about kind of understanding yourself. You have to start with who you are and what you value. And this has evolved over time, but our board and our staff has done a lot of deep thinking and conversation about what it is that we value. And you can see the 5 words, and you can find deeper descriptions of those words on our site, and always happy to share. Every decision that we make, we filter through these 5 values: integrity, relationships, equity, innovation, and courage. We're not pretending that we get it all right. We're not pretending that we are always fully, courageous in everything we do, but we're thoughtful about it. We challenge ourselves. And this is really kind of fundamental to community leadership. I think these are fantastic values. I think you can discuss, debate words and meanings, but I would love, and we've held these out there and been very clear, I would love for them to be aspirational community values. I think they're important. So that's kind of where we start. And since, I think maybe 2010-ish, we when you think about innovation, you could argue that maybe we weren't the most innovative in 2010, 2011, but we said, what, we're going to be innovative. We're going to commit to being innovative. And we created something called the AHA Project, the creative solutions to the real problems. And the whole concept of the AHA Project was to invite organizations and invite citizens to think differently, to have a safe space, to understand that you can learn from failure. You can fail fast, and you can iterate, and you can do great things. And it was really about, how do we get out of this incremental change mindset? How do we build something better? I really think that initiative set the stage for what the Community Foundation has been doing ever since, including Extraordinary Extra Give. But one of the projects that I think we're most proud of, because we still see it today, we invested in a creative solutions grant in LHOP, Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership at the time. Ray D'Agostino and Jim Schultz came in, pitched this idea. They were going to own property for the first time. They were going to set an anchor, and they were going to do business differently. And those first seed dollars basically took hold. They administered the project excellently. They did Jim and Ray did a fantastic job, and it started to catch root. And what it became was SOWE, the Southwest Neighborhood Project. It drew in tens of millions of dollars of investment over the years. And we're just proud that we planted that seed, and that seed has grown into something big and impactful for that piece of our neighborhood. And another opportunity that we invested in, and this really represents relationships. And I see Chris here from the High Foundation. Back in the day, it was actually, I think it was Bob Krasny at Steinman who came to us. I might be misremembering that, but somebody came to us and said, "Hey, we have this." It might have been the city, might have been the mayor at the time. We have an opportunity to bring Jeff Speck to Lancaster. He's a national expert on walkability and bikeability, but we need to pay him. We want to do a study. We want to invest in this. And it was like, okay, it's like you think about studies, and sometimes they sit on shelves and nothing happens. Well, we partnered with the High Foundation and with the Steinman Foundation. We all three pitched money into this to make this happen. Jeff Speck came to town. He did his assessment. He built out a plan. And I got to tell you, as I walk my dogs, as I ride my bike, as I see the curb cuts and the bike lanes going in, it's like I can see 15, 14 years later, you can see the seeds that were planted, that far back starting to take root, and that plan actually coming to life. And it's again, as a CEO of the Community Foundation over the last 16 years, there's so many times I'm in a room like this or on a call at Chairperson's Council, the Lancaster City Alliance Group, and there's a project being talked about, and it's like, we have a connection. There's a connection there. And I think there's some beauty in that and in taking advantage of opportunities. So we also, as Tracy said, we're about resiliency. Family aid, when we did that in 2008, we wanted to feed people, we wanted to keep people in their houses, and we wanted to keep the heat on, okay? We worked with 5 organizations and we cut checks. That's what we knew. When the pandemic happened, we had developed some other skill sets. We had engaged with folks who were high net worths. We had done some work with Extra Give around crowd funding. And we had partnerships in the community that we could leverage. And so the first call I made was to the United Way, because the United Way of Lancaster County they're the experts in the safety net. They are at the center of all of this. And we were not going to do this on our own. We needed a partner, and the United Way was the perfect partner. Kevin Ressler at the time, it was a kind of a no-brainer. We came together, and I'll give all the credit to Dave Kozer on our team, who saw it coming before it came and urged us to take action. We started to have some conversations, and what resulted was the Lancaster Cares COVID-19 Relief Fund, which was over $1 million, $1.4 million ish. About half of that came from phone calls to people who cared deeply about the community and could invest. And the other half came from individuals who jumped on our site and said, I'll give $25. And the United Way used their expertise to distribute this. And again, it was, it was kind of an eye-opener in that, we always used to say, well, a lot of folks work paycheck to paycheck. And when COVID happened, we realized that's actually a pretty long time. 2 weeks is quite a long time frame. That a lot of people work tip to tip, day to day, and it was they were an instant crisis. So it was again a proud moment for us to show as a community foundation what we could do in a time of our community's greatest needs. And it's going to grab. So this is the Lancaster County Racial Equity Profile. We worked in partnership with the YWCA. We really came out of conversations from Lancaster City Alliance, the Chairperson's Council. CAP was at the table, Community First Fund, Union Community Care, Lancaster Chamber, the United Way, and our partners at the High Foundation to do this. And it's like, I'll just give you an example. Like, we all kind of know this. Like, why did we have to do this? Sometimes and then sometimes when you see the data, it hits in a different way. And when you combine data with storytelling, it's even deeper and more meaningful. And so we did the Lancaster County's first ever racial equity profile. I'll just share one stat. If you looked at 2019 childhood poverty statistics, and you took the top line number, which is kind of what we look at. When we're looking at data, it's usually the top line data. It's kind of everybody. It's 14%, and that's not great. I mean, we'd love for our kids not to be in poverty, and we'd love for that number to be 0. That's the top line. That's what you read about. When you slice one slice deeper into demographics, that number for our Latinx and Black neighbors is 33 and 34%, respectively. That's a different number. That's a different experience. Same community, different experience. I could do an hourglass on that, but I won't. I'm going to move on. I'm going to tell a quick story because we talked a lot about projects that we direct, but most of the work we do, we don't direct. Our donors direct most of the work that we do. So you partner with us, and we're the guides. We're the experts. We will go with you to where you want to go as a philanthropist. And back years ago, we had the opportunity to work with a donor who said, I really want thriving economic opportunities for individuals. I want to invest in thriving opportunities. And they made one grant We helped coordinate this. And we were not passive, but we were not the decision makers. They made a grant to Stevens College for a welding program. And I happen to have the pleasure of being part of the first graduating class of that, to be at the graduation for the first graduating class. And there were 19 individuals. But I'm guessing, maybe I'm making assumptions, but these folks hadn't donned a cap and gown and walked in a graduation ceremony in their lives. They had their families, they had their kids, they had their parents. It was 45 minutes of validation of the work. Almost all of these individuals had $25 an hour jobs already lined up. They're the hottest thing on the market because people need welders. And it was just to see our role as a community foundation, as guides, as philanthropic partners, come from the donor's vision to this graduation and changing lives, real family of our neighbors in Lancaster. It probably the highlight of one of the many, and I probably could tell 100 stories, but one of the many highlights of being a part of this beautiful organization in this incredible community.
All right, Francis, I'm going to take us home. And so this is Sam's story about, being with the graduates at Stevens College. All the stories we've just talked about. I mean, there's big stories like, how do we think about possibilities for the Watshan department store? How do we invest in something like the racial equity profile to help give us information? And then this idea of individual stories. There are donors and families and businesses who have said, yeah, there are things we care about in this community. And they're all part of these 560 some individual funds that are making decisions and driving their passions with support from us and, in the context of our greater community. And so this year is, the reason we have all these stories is because people have made choices. People have been intentional. And so I have a chance to be intentional. You have a chance to be intentional. And when we think about the theme of this year, the way we're thinking about it, 1 year to change the next 100, we have some choices that we can make. And so we want to make sure that how part of how we're celebrating this year. We don't actually have a big gala on the calendar, but we do have a lot of other activities that are happening. So we are thinking, in terms of, it's so big, but we're also challenging ourselves and inspiring each other to think of these 4 big future-focused topic areas. So we'll be, hosting a series of free events around these topic areas. If you have that little brochure, which I don't have a prop, but there are dates on there. They're free and open to the public. And part of what will happen at those events, here it is. Part of what will happen at those events is we'll be announcing some what we call Shaping Tomorrow Awards. So we are also this year investing $1 million in grants and scholarships that are going to advance these big ideas. So we've invited our community benefit sector in partnership with municipalities or even private sector to imagine how do we advance these big ideas and start shaping the future for Lancaster County. This year, we will also be surprising and delighting you. You may or may not have had a cup of free coffee at any number of coffee shops around Lancaster County, with more to come, so keep your eyes out. And we are actually investing some dollars in local chambers and business associations to help drive some activity in hyperlocal neighborhoods, because we know that the business sector and the private sector is a really important partnership and part of the bigger puzzle that goes along with philanthropy. So lastly, keep an eye out this summer. We'll be making an announcement, but we are partnering with the city and the Steinman Institute and Atomic and Tate, and we'll be bringing some new activity to Binns Park and Ewell Plaza this summer. And we're really excited to help energize and activate that space in a different way as we start to imagine together, what is it that we want Lancaster to look like for the next 100 years? So, what is the opportunity? Why are we doing this? Why are we investing an extra $1 million this year in the community? And we can sit here today and think back and, 50, 80, 100 years ago, people were thinking about us effectively. There were visionary funders, Martin Harnish and some folks from the Lancaster Chamber at the time, and local bankers were saying, there's something we can do. We've got this mechanism. It's kind of trendy, but turns out it's lasted. And so people then, and over the last 100 years, have been thinking about us and making choices and making investments. So as we sit here today, we also have a chance to, really, marvel at the vision that was cast and to look forward to the next 30, 50, 80, and 100 years and think about what is our responsibility and what is our opportunity as a community to make some choices that will lead us through. We, with our core, we're a legacy organization. So it's like, what is the legacy you want to leave in this community? And what is the legacy we want to leave for Lancaster County? What do we imagine Lancaster County being 100 years from now? I put this up here one more time just because I think it's interesting data. And also, I told Sam the other day, last weekend, I went to visit my hometown, the town where I was born. I wasn't born in Lancaster, but I mostly grew up here. But went with my mom. We visited some friends. And so we did, a little drive down memory lane and all of that. And we passed the house where I lived when I was born, when I was a baby. And the house is a little rough, a little rancher, a little rough shape now. But my mom she was like, the tree. And then she told me the story of the little volunteer stick tree that my dad had dug up from somewhere and planted in the front of the yard. And she was like a little skeptical. She's like, nice. And he's like, it'll be good. It'll be good. So they only actually lived in that house for a few years. But today, of course, and I'm in my 50s, but today it is a huge 25-foot sweeping oak tree. And it was really cool to see that. And then I knew I was doing this presentation. So I just wanted to share that story because, things happen in 50 years. And it's really a lot about the choices that we make and tending to those choices. So I don't have a picture of the tree. Anyway, but what you are invited is to be part of this changing the next 100 years. We have a lot of beautiful qualities in Lancaster County. One of them is humility and a really beautiful, humble nature about some of the spectacular things that happen in Lancaster County. One of the things we say is, humility can be the enemy of inspired philanthropy. And so what we've seen with Extra Give altogether is how much excitement and energy we can generate when we talk about things we care about. When we say to one another, wow, we really feel passionate about this. Can you imagine what if we invested in that? What would that look like? So that's something we're hoping that we can all do together. You can go to this website. You can use your phone now. We'll send it out later. But there is a website fully about, it's on the Lankfound website, but it's also a deeper dive into how do we change the next 100 years. You can imagine, you can certainly give now. It's an opportunity. You can support active funds that are generating dollars today. It's a way, again, as we democratize philanthropy, how do we make space for people to be able to engage in giving circles, in donor-advised funds, in gifts to the I Love Lancaster Fund. So lots of ways to give now. And beyond that, think about a legacy gift. I mean, you don't have to change your lifestyle today. That's what legacy is about. It's about caring and having things that live beyond our lifetimes. And what do I care about? What does my family care about? And how do we create a promise for the future? So most importantly, let's have a conversation. This is about how we together build Lancaster County to be the place we want it to be. So we're happy to talk about it. We are philanthropic partners. We have people from our team here today. Ashlyn is here. Our board member, Jeff Gwendon, is here. Clinton Bublitz is here. This is what we do. We're carrying the baton, and we're here to work together with all of us to make sure that we're setting Lancaster up to be the Lancaster County we want it to be and can imagine together for the next 100 years. So here we are. And there's our QR code. Feel free. And thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, raise your hand high if you have some questions or comments from the community for the folks. I'll come around. Did not make the slideshow, but when I was there, we got rid of the really bad quilt logo and have the new logo now, so you're welcome for that.
I was curious as to whether or not there are guidelines or categories, or guidelines toward funding the 4 categories in the next 100 years. What portion of the money is going into each category? And is there any concept about what you anticipate the number of individual grants will be in each category?
It's a really great question, and all of that is available on our website. So we have a section of our website for this year called Shaping Tomorrow Awards. The 4 awards, basically, it's divvied up equally between the 4 categories. We've gone through, haven't finalized anything yet, but well-being and creative expression. We've already accepted the applications. We've gone through a preliminary process. We've narrowed the process, the applications down to about 12. They're applications anywhere from $15,000 to $100,000 applications, and we'll be convening, which is very common for us, convening a group of community volunteers with some of our board, with our staff, and a representative expert in each area to have a full discussion and to select the final awards. And then those awards will be announced. The first 2 will be announced this spring, and then the second 2 categories, Our Planet, and Next Generation, will be awarded in the fall. Same process. And just, from a community foundation perspective, one of the things that we want this year to be about is listening and learning. So we're really looking hard at these grants, and we're listening to conversations, and we're wanting to find where there's energy, where we might be able to kind of learn from what's happening in the community and direct our work moving forward, at least some of the granting work and the community engagement work that we control.
I'll add a little bit to that too. So, I mean, this is true for any grant cycle. So we only have, $1 for every 10 requests, any time of year, any kind of grant. And so that's one of the really challenging parts of this organization. So one of the things we're doing specific to the Shaping Tomorrow Awards, our team just, we actually sent out some of the grant requests, some of the applications to our donors, to our fund holders, to say, hey, you're part of the community foundation. We're all looking together at what we can do. So are you interested in directing any of your fund dollars to support any of these causes? So, we try and kind of open it up when it makes sense. We're getting better at that. This is one of the first times we're doing it that way. But it's not all about us and the volunteer reviewers making decisions. It's also an opportunity for, people who are funding and care about the community. A lot of us, if we have a fund at the Community Foundation, we only know what we know in this community, right? But someone like a community foundation has a pretty broad purview because a lot of people are coming to us all the time because they have great ideas and, they're really experts and really passionate. And it's a way for us to share that information with individual donors who might not have contact with that particular information.
Other questions and comments for the...
Thank you both. Really terrific presentation, captured the imagination a number of different ways. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about how you do priority setting for the organization. And in particular, I was intrigued about the local nature of the organization, but also some of the regional and national networks that you've mentioned, and how perhaps it's not a tension, but the relationship between that national picture and the local picture, and how that may feed into your priority setting.
Well, the blessing and the curse of having what in the business is called discretionary assets is that there's a lot of weight that we bear to actually direct to the highest, best use. So we talk a lot about that as a board and as a team with respect to grant making. We understand that, only a piece of our work is actually the grants, those dollars that feed community organizations in a certain direction. We know that from experience that when we set a priority, because there's dollars behind it, that folks will pay attention. So over the years, it started with capacity building work prior to my tenure, and the nonprofit resource networks through Millersville University that the Community Foundation was instrumental in funding. And at the time, it was we need leadership to be able to take this important sector to the next level. It evolved to an arts project and arts as economic development, and then the AHA project around innovation. Our strategy currently revolves around two issues that come right off of our values sheet. One is bridge building. How do we, as a community foundation, living in a community of 550,000 people who have 550,000 perspectives, and who share some values and who may not share other values, how do we engage and how do we continue to invite people in and encourage people to participate, learn from each other, and evolve as a community? And the other side of that is equity. How do we get the resources that we have and that our community has to the folks in our community who, if they only had that chance, they would be able to live a full and thriving life. So that equity and bridge building work is complicated. It's hard to measure. It's long term. It can be controversial and messy and argumentative at times. It's a whole unique ball game. We have been, as Lancaster County Community Foundation and as Lancaster County, with the extra give and a lot of what we've done, we have been on the cutting edge of some of that work. So much so that we're in Chicago in May, or working with the Council on Foundations to share our experiences, along with folks that you would know, like David Brooks and others, to really share the work we're doing. And in plugging in nationally with the Council on Foundations, we're able to share our story, and we're able to hear other stories, and we're able to share best practices. And so we have learned almost every great idea that we've had, wasn't our idea, okay? Including extra give. It's like plugging into really smart people across now, in this community, you can't plug in an idea from another community wholesale. This has to be a Lancaster County thing. And so we work really hard to adopt and adapt ideas that we bring to make it, Lancaster County based. But we're learning constantly. We get a lot wrong and we get a lot right. And on balance, we're making progress, and we're trying to lean into that courage value as best we can. We don't always live up to it, but we're willing to have the difficult conversations. We have an open door. We've been relentlessly pursuing bridging and equity simultaneously, which is not, it can be challenging.
Another question, comment? Yep. Great. Here.
Sam, I have a very simple question, just for my curiosity. Who was the recipient of that first $600 grant?
That is a good question.
It was a woman by the name of, are you ready? Erna Grassmuck is her name. And she was an educator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have a separate event of 100-year trivia, the Community Foundation. Any last questions, comments?
When you make decisions about where to give money, how do you determine whether this is a Band-Aid or you're going after a root cause of the problem that you see you're trying to fix?
That's a great question. That's the question of every grant maker in the country, in the world, right? And I mean, yeah, we do our best. And so I think when it comes to priorities, so we listen to our community, a little bit back to what you're asking, Chris. We're listening to our community to say, what do you need? What do you need? And so we've done that in a variety of ways over time, including surveys and at the table and, some other work with, a community champion surveys. But yeah, what does it look like? I think we really lean on the expertise of the people who are on the ground, because we're the funders, but it's the people who are working every day in the front lines that are helping us kind of get some perspectives. And sometimes we are funding a Band-Aid, and we know that, but that's part of, there's funding for now and there's funding for later. And I think that's a really big reason that this idea of possibility is helpful, why we can fund studies to help us get a broader perspective so that we can start to tune into, okay, what are the actual causes? What are the root causes? How do we work upstream? How do we get that information? So there's a little bit of both, kind of both and certainly with, individuals who are making choices out of their funds are kind of working in both of those spaces too.
That was the most, half of our resources are directed by others. So we're an educational institution. We're trying to, Ashley and her team are trying to guide our donors to effective grant making and making effective decisions. We've joked internally, it's like, we could be heroes if we just provide soup at soup kitchens. I mean, everybody would say, oh my gosh, look how many people they fed. But what would that do? In 100 years, we'd say our obligation as an organization, we think, is to get to the root cause of issues. And it's challenging. Philanthropy's a piece. It's not the solution, but it's a piece, and it can work in really effective ways around the edges. But I think there's a bigger conversation to be had with respect to things like ALICE, the United Way's asset limited income constrained employed metric, and the fact that our safety net services are sometimes overwhelmed with individuals who are working full time and yet can't pay the bills. So again, another thought for the Hourglass as a future topic.
We are actually at time for today, so if you have some more questions, I'm sure they'll hang out a little bit afterwards. Thank you so much to our speakers. Let's give them a round of applause. Congratulations on your 100th anniversary. And yeah, I don't know if you want to do a quick plug for your first event that's coming up, but you can let people know and they can join you.
Yeah, I'll let you know. March 27th, we're going to be at Pod 2 at Rock Lidditz celebrating creative expression. We'll be announcing our first round of grants. There'll be fun, interactive, creative activities. And we'll be hearing from Rob Barber from Atomic, who's going to talk a little bit about why do we care about creative expression for the next 100 years. And thanks to Diana. It's really fun to see her in this role.
Yeah, thank you so much. As always, a video recording of today's talk and the PowerPoint slides will be on our website and YouTube channel next week, so feel free to share that. Our next First Friday Forum will be back here on Friday, April 5th. We are going to be diving into what is going on with the city's Home Rule Study Commission. So if that's a topic you've been meaning to learn about, it's a little bit complicated, so please join us at our next First Friday Forum and learn more about what that charter can mean for the city, because it's going to be basically a new constitution for the city of Lancaster is what they're proposing. So join us then, and if you want to get invites to all of our events, please become an Hourglass member. You can do that on our website, hourglasslancaster.org. Till then, have a great weekend. Enjoy this nice sunshine. Thanks.